Hello, people of the internet. I am Andres Perez, aka Kaiju Noir, and welcome to episode 21 of Fully Endorsed. At least I hope to God it's 21, since this is the first episode since the D-Man appearance. So here with me, as always, is my trusty and faithful co-host, Mr. Dylan McCandless, aka Super DM64.
Parallelograms.
We'll get to that very... just you wait, good sir. So
better be episode 21 because I am drinking.
So that's right, the show is finally old enough to drink, and to celebrate such an occasion, I decided to, for today's topic, to talk about one of my favorite, if not potentially my all-time favorite animated series ever, Sym-Bionic Titan, the 20-episode the 20-episode series created by Genndy Tartakovsky, Brian Andrews, and Paul Ruddish, which lasted, unfortunately, for one beautiful season before it was tragically cut short. It aired on Cartoon Network from September 17th, 2000 to April 9th, 2010, at which point...
Wait, you said 2000.
Sorry, oh shit, there I go again. September 17th, 2010 to April 9th, 2011, thank you very much. And so after...
I was like, damn, that's a long time to air 20 episodes. He did Samurai Jack in between, he was working on Dexter's Lab.
And Clone Wars. No, but yeah, this is made by this was created by Genndy Tartakovsky, who you may know as the individual who has worked on a number of animated shows throughout Cartoon Network's history, as well as some other projects. He is best known as the creator of Dexter's Laboratory, Samurai Jack, Star Wars Clone Wars, and recently Primal. He is also the director of the Hotel Transylvania trilogy. And so among all the,
the man touches his gold. I mean, let's face it. Exactly,
yeah. And yet, for whatever reason, Sym-Bionic Titan is never as talked about or as hyped up as much as his other projects. Everyone knows Dexter's Laboratory, Samurai Jack, and recently Primal, but nobody talks about Sym-Bionic Titan, and I feel that is a crying darn shame, especially from the kaiju community, who I'm very disappointed in, by the way, because...
You know what I think it is? I think it's because this aired at a time when Cartoon Network was going through something of a transitional period in its life. It was the end of an era, and it wasn't the current shitty era. It was, I think a lot of people quit watching around the 2009 mark, like I did. Not everyone stuck around through the hardships like you.
Right.
And I just feel like it never got that much exposure to most people. I feel like everyone was either not watching Cartoon Network anymore or too young to remember it.
Right.
It's just one of those weird things that hit at just the wrong time. I feel like if this had come out a couple years prior, not only would I have seen it when it aired, but I think it would have been a lot more popular.
That is very true, yeah. This was definitely, aired right at the cusp of the, I guess what some fans may call the Cartoon Network Renaissance, where we had shows like Adventure Time, Regular Show, and Steven Universe that all kind of reinvigorated the interest in the network itself.
There's also been a huge shift away from action cartoons.
Very true, right. This is also around the era... this is also around the era of Ben 10, Alien Force, or Omniverse, and later on, Generator Rex as well. And a
slew of failed Scooby-Doos.
Yeah. Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, as well as, I want to say, what was that? Oh yeah, Star Wars, The Clone Wars. And so there was definitely a decline during this era, and I guess it's perhaps another example that giant monster, giant robot entertainment may be too niche to survive, perhaps, which is a crying darn shame, because, everyone probably knows that I am a huge fan. Dylan and I are huge fans of giant monster entertainment. We also love ourselves some good old giant robot action, and so to have...
It's big and punches things, we're in.
Exactly. So, to have one, Genndy Tartakovsky, the man who has brought us so much... a wonderfully talented and visionary artist who has helped create so many beloved iconic cartoons from my childhood. The fact that someone as talented as him and his friends came together to make a show about monsters and robots and shit that's like a dream come true to me, and it's something that I feel like anyone who is like a Godzilla or Mazinger Z or Gundam or Power Rangers fan should definitely need to check this out. And it looks like this...
And if you're at all familiar with Gindy's work, then you know that these are things that he's already a fan of. There are several times in Dexter's lab, we had several episodes where Dexter was, he had his mech suit, and he would fight giant monsters and things of that like. A lot of people have it twisted, and they think Powerpuff Girls was a Gindy project. It was not. It was his friend Craig McCracken.
Yeah.
But again, Craig McCracken, also a big fan of these things. You see this in Powerpuff Girls, the original series. I don't know about the new shit.
We don't talk about the new shit.
We don't talk about the new shit. There's a great episode of Samurai Jack where Samurai Jack pilots a giant samurai robot. It's always been a thing that's been in his work.
He's always been quite the weeb.
Indeed. And there's stuff in this show that also calls back to his other stuff. I mentioned to you that the entire plot of this series is very similar to an episode of Samurai Jack that I remember. I remember them all. Called Jack and the Flying Prince and Princess, in which these aliens had escaped from like a war and crashed on Earth, and Samurai Jack had to help them. It's very similar to what happens in this. Also, the like arena in this, where like the bad guy has the monsters fight to determine who he's going to send to Earth.
Yeah,
reminded me a lot of an episode of Star Wars Clone Wars. Do you remember the one where Count Dooku went to that planet and there was like an arena just like this, where there was a bunch of giant monsters like fighting each other?
I think I do.
And then Asajj Ventress comes in and murders them all.
Right, and she's like, "I am Sith." Was that her first appearance?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's just a ton of shit in this. This is so Gindy.
Right, and this is essentially his moment to go full Gindy.
Right, Gindy to the max.
Anyway, sorry, what were you gonna say?
I don't know. Also in the very pilot of Samurai Jack, Aku attacking the palace. That is a very kaiju-esque scene. It feels a lot like something out of like Daimajin.
That's very true. Yeah.
So I mean, this stuff has always been a thing in Gindy's work, and it's nice to see him just do that genre.
just cut loose. Yeah.
Just do it. He doesn't have to take a special episode to do it in. He just does it.
Right. It's like, no more foreplay. We're going full throttle now. Exactly.
Bring out the twerking.
Oh God, you're right. Oh, we'll get to that. Okay, I will touch on it for just a little bit. So, the sad thing about this show is that it's got a rather interesting reputation as being the show with the twerking animated girl. And the sad thing is so many people perhaps know about Sym-Bionic Titan only because of that single clip on YouTube. And I find it's certainly the most memorable part of the show, let's be honest. Perhaps, but there's so much. I don't remember any of the fight choreography, but that dance choreography is. Again, there's just so much to this show, and there's actually quite a lot of interesting context behind that infamous scene, as gratuitous as it was. But there's so much to this show, and yet people only know for it because of the twerking animation. And it's like...
Another interesting thing about this show, though, I think something similar happened to this show as what happened to Mr. Meaty, in that it doesn't really know what audience it's playing to. I feel like they were marketing this as another, like, action show for kids, but a lot of it is very adult.
Yeah, that's very true.
Or not adult. Adult's not the right word. No. It's just more mature.
Right. It's definitely it's borderline. It's almost borderline on the primal audience, which is straight up for Adult Swim.
I think it's more meant for like older, like teens or preteens who still enjoy animation.
You know what? It's really pretty much for like the Toonami crowd.
Yes, it should have been aired there, or somewhere. I don't know. I feel like there's not really a great programming block for this, but Toonami is probably the closest, and I don't even remember if Toonami was a thing in 2010. Because there's violence in the show, and it's not like Samurai Jack violence where like they're all robots, so it's fine. No, there's like legitimate violence in the show and blood and stuff. There's twerking. people are horny.
Oh God, are they horny?
So horny.
There's definitely a lot of like what would you call it? Like sexual tension involved in this show.
This is the horniest I've ever seen Gindi. And I gotta tell you, more please. Can we introduce a sexy cave woman into Primal Season 2?
I was gonna say, well, wait a minute, hold on, Dylan. Can you really say that? These are some underage high school characters.
Spear starts going ooga booga. Okay. No, they're cartoons. It's fine.
I mean, hey, I guess if Japan can get away for it for so long, fuck it.
We don't know what the age of consent is on their planet.
Well, anyways, going into the actual series itself.
I keep getting older, but they stay the same age.
That's Gendy's mentality. It's like, I keep getting older, but I draw them the same age. Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Are you willing to draw this character twerking? I don't know, sir. It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
Next thing you know, we're unfortunately going to have ourselves another, what's the guy from Pixar? Was it John Lasseter? No, I don't think so. Darn it.
Who's the guy who got ousted from Nickelodeon?
Oh,
but he used to do
the guy from the Loud House.
The feet guy, right? The guy who was like obsessed with feet.
No, that's Dan Schneider.
He used to do all the live action shit on Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
And he was the Quentin Tarantino of children's television. There was so much.
Oh, by the way, okay, I was right. It was John Lasseter who was got into a little bit of controversy himself at Pixar. Anyways, I remember when I first saw this show at a preview at a Cartoon Network related panel at Comic-Con. It was actually, I believe, my very first Comic-Con that I've ever attended, and they showed off the concept art for what would be the main characters in their robot suits. And I thought, oh wow, a story about aliens and their robot pal saving the day in a giant robot suit, fighting monsters. This sounds like totally up my alley. And I was pretty much there from beginning to end. I watched every single episode from 1 all the way to 20, and I kept waiting for the next season, and I kept waiting and waiting. And it was around this time that I had become acclimated to the internet, and once I looked up online, I was pretty much like met with the devastating news that the series was canceled after just 1 season. And apparently it's been said that because the show could not secure a licensor, they weren't able to, get a licensor to create toys and merchandise. And unfortunately, that's like most animated shows on television live and die by their merch sales. And so no merch, no show. And unfortunately, that's the way business rolls. And so that's why it ended up not panning out, unfortunately, which really sucks. Go ahead.
It makes you wonder why they don't just go back to doing it the way they did in the 80s. Just make the toy line before you even make the show, and then you don't have to worry about it.
I guess that's mainly because, like, maybe Genndy Tartakovsky was just someone who just did not really focus so much on the merchandise. He just wanted to tell a good story and show off some great action in the process.
Right. I just mean in general. Why we keep hearing about these great cartoons that get canceled because they couldn't sell toys, and it's like, well, just do the toy line first, and then it's like, it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't think you should be worried about selling toys anyway. That's not what television is for. But
maybe that was Genndy Tartakovsky. Maybe maybe he just was too darn good at telling stories that he didn't think about the money first.
He's a damn animation hipster. Meanwhile, the head of Cartoon Network is fucking Yogurt from Spaceballs, and he's just like, the flamethrower! Okay.
Right. And so for you, personally, I know you haven't seen this until now, but you yourself...
I had watched the first episode, like, a couple years back, and I had meant to watch more of it and just never did. Mm-hmm. And I knew about it mostly from you telling us about it, and me being like, what? A Genndy thing that I didn't know about? What sorcery is this? What do you mean?
Right. But like you're also like a hardcore Genndy fan.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I may be the most Genndy fan. He's one of the 3 most influential artists to me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally.
And interestingly enough, they all have last names that start with T. It's Tartakovsky, Toriyama, and
Tim.
Tim, thank you.
Some call me Tim.
Tim.
Yeah.
Greetings, Tim the animator.
It's like, we're just gonna call you Bruce from now on. Yeah, and so also another interesting note about this show is that it came out not just at an interesting time in terms of animation, but also at a rather curious point in kaiju entertainment history, because this was 3 years before Pacific Rim came out, 4 years before Godzilla 2014 came out. This was
Godzilla had been dead for half a decade at this point.
Yeah. And this was also like right before IDW started coming out with Godzilla comics. So this was when we had like what do you call it? A dearth of content, like pretty much like nothing really coming out that had anything to do with giant monster, even robot stuff. Like even Ultraman, I think, was kind of on pseudo hiatus by only making movies at this point.
That's interesting. I mentioned before that I think this would have been more successful if it had come out a few years prior. I think it also probably would have been more successful if it had come out a few years later, because you know, there was an added bit of interest in the genre once like Pacific Rim and Godzilla and all those movies started coming out. I feel like if you released this series now, it might get a better reaction.
Which is interesting that you say that, because they've definitely tried to... The show has definitely tried... Or Cartoon Network has definitely tried to find a new audience with this series. Like, it was in 2012 that the 20 episodes were rerun on Adult Swim's Toonami block, along with the 2011 television series Thundercats, like the 2011 remake or reboot of Thundercats.
Right.
Back when Toonami like first came back. After being like on hiatus for so long. Well, not so much on hiatus, but being like canceled and then brought back. And then in 2014, apparently Cartoon Network wrote off the entire series for financial reasons. But the series later returned and was re-released on Netflix last year in 2019. So yeah, currently it is about as available as it can possibly be. So anyone can check out all 20 episodes of Sym-Bionic Titan on Netflix, unless you happen to be me living in Japan and you're unable to access it without NordVPN. So go on to NordVPN, put in promo code Chaijin. No, you're not.
I wish. I wish we had a
right?
promo code for NordVPN.
NordVPN, ExpressVPNs, what's it called? Surfshark VPN.
Surfshark. There's so many.
Yeah. I really should get around to getting a free trial. So yeah, let's dig into this. So, what apparently was used as the inspiration for the story of Sym-Bionic Titan was a combination of John Hughes movies like 16 Candles and The Breakfast Club, a little bit of Hayao Miyazaki's Castle in the Sky in terms of the relationship between the two teenage leads, as well as just mecha anime and just classic old school anime in general that Tartakovsky grew up with, like Speed Racer, Macross / Robotech, and Voltron / Go Lion. And so what we have here is a series about two teens and a robot. They are what do you call them, refugees from a war-torn planet who have escaped to planet Earth, where they disguise themselves as high school teenagers, and occasionally giant monsters are sent to track them down because the teenage girl happens to be the princess of the planet that was taken over. And so they're trying to kill her, to kill off the last of the monarchy. And so the two teenagers and their robot have the ability to combine their technology to form a big giant robot where they share a single consciousness and constantly save the day on a regular basis while dealing with the hardships of living as strangers in a strange land. And
it's interesting because Genndy really did the drift before Guillermo del Toro.
That is true, yeah. Also, a little side note here. Well, yeah, that you're totally right about that. That, like, within the fact that, like, Lance, Alana, and their robot Octus all share a consciousness where they're able to still communicate with each other, but, like, by focusing all, like, simultaneously, they're able to control different aspects of the robots. And yeah, it definitely plays a huge factor in terms of them having to work together as a team as they shared one single body, while also tying into the themes of like heart, heart, body, and mind, which is the mantra of their alien planet. And
they have to combine heart, body, and mind in order to summon Captain Planet. I mean, Sym-Bionic Titan.
Right. Another side note, I remember when I first met James Biggie, who is an graphic designer and cover artist for IDW. You may have seen a lot of his minimalist work on Transformers, Ninja Turtles recently, 2000 AD, and he did one cover for Godzilla Rage Across Time. He's also the co-creator, alongside Frankie B. Washington, on Robot God Akamatsu, which was an indie giant robot comic that was a huge inspiration for me to create my own indie giant robot comic, Primal Warrior Draco Azul. And I remember when I was talking to him, he mentioned to me how he became a little nervous because his comic had a similar, like, mind-melding, shared consciousness idea going on. And when he saw Sym-Bionic Titan, he loved the Sym-Bionic Titan, but he was also a little bit afraid that people might think he's trying to copy the show because it's the same concept.
Luckily for him, nobody saw it.
Aww. That's true. But hey, there's nothing wrong with sharing similar ideas. Lots of ideas and concepts have been shared, throughout history in terms of storytelling. And what matters is the execution.
How do you think I feel looking at Sym-Bionic Titan and seeing that his helmet is inspired by Corinthian helmets? I'm like, shit.
Yeah, that's right. There is definitely like a lot of callbacks and references throughout this show in like very major and minor ways. Like even like just from a design aesthetic, you can tell like looking at Alana's hair, for instance, is very similar to Ashi's hair from Samurai Jack season 5. Was it 5?
Oh yeah,
I think it was 5.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, he definitely just took that hair and made it black and put it on Ashi. Well, it's a little different because
she has bangs.
Alana's has more bangs.
Right.
Ashi just has a widow's peak.
True, yeah.
Very Vegeta.
There's also like Lance's father is based off of one of the scientist characters from Ninja Science Team Gatchaman. There's a couple monsters out there that kind of look similar to other monsters, like the second to last monster we see is seemingly based off of Naranga from Ultraman. Let's see, we have the G3, which is like a shadowy organization that works behind the scenes, kind of like this series' Science Patrol, for those of you who are Ultraman fans. Their whole getup is very heavily inspired by like Sentai and Kamen Rider outfits, maybe a little bit of Cyborg 009 as well. And
definitely with the scarves. Very Ishinomori all around. They feel like Cyborg 009 mixed with like Sentai, or especially early Sentais where like the outfits basically just look like biker outfits,
Right. And pretty much like, yeah, Shinomori, he created all that stuff. He loved, inserting his like biker motif and everything.
They're definitely like a mixture of like Sentai and like Kamen Rider and Cyborg 009 as far as like the design goes. Very, very cool.
The character of Solomon, like he definitely, I've never seen Hellsing, but he definitely looks like the main character from that anime.
He does a lot. And I made that joke constantly while we were watching this, and I don't know which came first, the Hellsing or the Solomon. I don't know when that anime came out.
Right, I can check very quickly right now.
Somebody's ripping somebody off, but I don't know who it is.
Let's see here. And Hellsing came out in 2006. Hellsing came out in 2001. Okay, so just another version of Hellsing came out in 2006. All right,
so yeah. It's important when you're looking at anime to remember that there's the Japanese date that it came out and the American localization
and
date.
And then there's the manga that came out in 97. There we go.
Let's see.
So there we go. We've exposed Tartakovsky as a plagiarist. He is an unoriginal plagiarist hack.
He's canceled.
And what's that hashtag Tartakovsky's over party? Who can spell that?
Just gonna walk around with signs, Tartakovsky unfair.
So going by these episode by episode, something that you and I noticed was that it definitely throws like a lot of information at you, jam packs it into the first episode, since we we start off the series right off the bat with Lance, Alana, and Octus crash landing onto Earth, and they kind of exposit some information. They let us know one's a princess, one's a bodyguard, one's a robot, and they gotta hide on Earth because their planet's in trouble.
It's definitely the most lore-heavy show, I think, that Tartakovsky has ever done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, don't get me wrong, Samurai Jack has lore,
mm-hmm.
but it just feels like there's so much more in this. And maybe it's just because the lore in this show is delivered mainly through exposition.
Or flashback episodes.
Or flashback, whereas in Samurai Jack, it was all laid out visually over the course of the opening three-parter. And then from there on, each episode was very self-contained and for the most part, very simplistic. This is like a huge tapestry, and like we're revealed little bits of it at a time. And again, there's so much exposition and so many little details, backstory to be fleshed out. I think it's definitely got the most complex narrative that Tartakovsky has ever attempted.
Mm-hmm. And you know what?
With Star Wars, the benefit of like 2 movies to build off of.
Right. You know what? Maybe it's very possible that the reason why he made Primal as simplistic as it is maybe just in case it gets canceled early on, he doesn't have to leave so much story left hanging.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this to you. I feel like this show is in a lot of ways the anti-Primal.
Right.
Because it's so much more complex and like intricate than Gindy's normal work. Whereas Primal is very stripped down. Mm-hmm. It's Gindy simplified is maybe not the best word. Distilled. It's like essence of Gindy,
Right.
It's Gindy at his most, dare I say, primal.
I also got to say this. I know there's like a rather prominent member of the Godzilla community who at one point on Facebook mentioned that this series looks great but has like no story whatsoever. And to this MFer, I got to say, are you
watch the same show?
I know, it's like, are you fucking kidding me? And this is like well after the show was canceled, and so he was just, I guess, late to the game, I guess. But it's like, really? Especially after the first episode with the constant like exposition dumps, which I will say is, while it is a lot of exposition they throw at you at the beginning of the series, I feel like it is handled as well as it could for a story that starts off like right in the middle while getting ready to kind of tell you how we got to that point later on. It's pretty much a similar strategy that I used for my comic book, where I don't really start off like how we got to that point, rather just kind of throwing you in the middle of the action before proceeding to let you know, how we got to that point to begin with. And I think, not all the answers. The first episode does leave you with a lot of questions, appropriately so. And I believe that, little by little, they do explain the characters' predicaments and where they came from, especially in the case of Lance. I think he got the most attention when it came to lore, and so I feel I don't want to give the impression that every episode is like that. It's not all exposition dumps throughout the entire show. The majority of the conflict and drama from the individual episodes of the show comes from character interaction. Yes. And, it's a very heavily very character-based show.
Yeah, we have 3 very strong, very different characters here, and the interplay between them is what makes up the bulk of the drama.
Very true, yeah. So we have.
I don't know if Gindy is a Trekkie at all, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if I found out that Octus was at least partially inspired by Data from the Next Generation. I got some major Data vibes all throughout the show.
I do remember there was a Star Trek parody episode in Dexter's Laboratory.
I think you're right.
But yeah, it's this would be a good time to get into the characters themselves. We have Ilana, who is the princess. She's a huge optimist, always trying to look on the bright side of everything. She's generally the peacekeeper, a really great balance to the hot-headed Lance, who is someone with a ton of emotional baggage. He's kind of very, how would I say, he tries to almost like a shut-in, or someone who is too afraid to open up to other people. but later slowly grows to trust Alana and Octis. And he's definitely...
He's the Vegeta, or the Hiei, or the Sasuke, whatever. The
loner. He was the loner kid that we were kind of making fun of Lance of, but this is a good attempt at a good execution of the loner character, the lone wolf character.
He's the Logan. See, not all of our references are weeb references.
Right. And he definitely has his flashback episodes were amazing in my opinion. And
I would also like to point out Alana's perhaps greatest character flaw, which is that in her eternal optimism and her hope to make everybody happy and to be liked, she has a tendency to overdo things.
Right. She tries to put, I guess because she is in a position of power as a princess, she tries to put the entire world on her shoulders, and sometimes she just, overexerts herself, or, she stretches herself too thin with what she can or cannot do, and eventually...
And also, when you're a teenager in America... There's nothing less cool than trying hard. So she is immediately just like a social pariah. Right.
That's a funny thing. A constant, kind of running gag here is that Alana wants to be seen as a symbol of optimism. She wants to take on a leadership role to try to bring everybody together in high school, and yet she is seen as just a freak, or just a loser, a weirdo, a knucklehead McSpazitron. And meanwhile, Lance makes no attempt to socialize with anyone, and yet everyone thinks he's the hottest shit in high school.
I believe the word you were looking for is doofus.
Yes. Nice callback there. Lance is pretty much the most popular kid at school, while Alana is a quote-unquote doofus. And meanwhile, we have Octis, who is... a very, like you mentioned, he is the Data of the show, where he is a robot who, over time, adopts more humanistic traits to the point where he starts to question himself whether does he consider himself more robot or more human. And by the end, all he can answer is with, "I am neither. I am simply Octis." And it's a very, very beautiful and very intriguing character arc that Octis goes through as well, as he plays somewhat of both a older brother figure to both of them, as well simultaneously as a surrogate father figure to Lance and Alana, as he adopts two literal disguises, one being Newton, which he names himself after one of Earth's most brilliant scientists, and their unnamed father whenever they are seen in the neighborhood.
Right.
And also interestingly enough, as the series goes on, you start to see Octis less in his robot form, and he seemingly feels more comfortable in his human disguises than he would be as simply a robot, even in the privacy of their own home.
Well, to the point that in the last shot of the show, when they're inside the Sym-Bionic Titan sort of mind meld, which normally in there you see Octis in his little hovering ball form. The last shot that you see of him in there is a picture of his human disguise.
Exactly, yeah. So it's he definitely identifies more and more with his human persona, to the point where he ends up in a relationship in what is perhaps the most controversial, yet honestly one of the most touching episodes in the whole series. And it's all three of them are, like you said, they play off each other very, very well, with Octis being the more logistical thinking individual, Lance being the more shoot first, ask questions later type character, and Alana trying...
Well, Lance is also very logistical, but it's a different kind. He's a soldier. He's Kyle Reese from Terminator.
That is true.
Whereas Octis is more sort of just overall logical, scientific...
Or how about more tactical for Lance?
Yeah, definitely.
And meanwhile, Alana is someone who definitely plays more to her emotions, and she tries to emotionally appeal to both of her members of her surrogate family.
She wants to be a social butterfly so bad, and it just doesn't work.
And I guess in terms of the supporting characters, we don't see a whole lot of them in this first season. We do get romantic interests for all three characters, and the one that we see the ones we see the most are Kimmy, who is like the stuck-up, snotty, bratty cheerleader who eventually grows a heart after. She's the one
who twerks, in case anyone at home is working.
Yes, she's the one. Part of that infamous clip. She tries to get Newton to. Newton is, again, the robot's student in disguise. She tries to get him to want to retake the test for her at home, because if she loses the test, or if she fails the test, she can't do cheerleading anymore. She's the captain of the cheerleader. She pretty much, her whole self-esteem and self-confidence and identity revolves around being a cheerleader and looking pretty and using her good looks to get anything she wants. Meanwhile, Newton's
way to take the bitchy cheerleader sort of character
archetype,
yeah, that's the word I was searching for. Way to take that and to flesh it out and to turn her into an actual person. Literally one episode later, we had just been introduced to this bitchy cheerleader, and then in the very next episode, suddenly they flesh her out into a full-fledged character, and suddenly you understand why she was acting that way, and she begins to change.
Yeah. And it's all she needed was someone to tell her, hey, you're more than that. You shouldn't let, society tell you what you can or cannot do. That's up for you to decide. You can choose whoever you want to be. You're just as capable being anyone you want. And it's that confidence, it's that sort of, reaching out to her that causes her to look at life in a whole new way, and why she suddenly gains a brand new appreciation for Newton, and that leads to some of the most charming and hilarious interactions in the show, I'd say. And the other character I'd probably say is very noteworthy is Ed, who is just the big dumb jock who is voiced by the dude who does Patrick from SpongeBob, and it's just he is essentially Patrick. It's the same character overall. Just imagine if Patrick went to high school and was a human. That's him. That's Ed.
Right.
And again, he's a very charming. He's a charmingly stupid character who works off of someone as smart as Octus, or Newton in this case.
We want to explain the other two love interests that are introduced, although they are not as long running.
Yeah, they're not. I think that's the unfortunate thing, because there's only one season. We don't get a whole lot of development out of them. We know that
I get the sense that Alana and Lance are going to eventually end up together rather with any of them anyway.
That's a weird thing, yeah, because they're not brother and sister. They disguise themselves as brother and sister, but it's are they going to pair them up or not? I'm very curious.
If they do, they'll have to keep that shit on wraps.
Right? Everyone's going to be what?
This is a weird ultimate Marvel, Wanda and Peter situation.
But remember, they're not actually brother and sister.
No. It's less weird than Star Wars.
True.
With Luke and Leia, and yet somehow it feels more weird, but it shouldn't, because it's less weird.
I wonder how many pieces of entertainment are out there where non-siblings have to disguise themselves as siblings and
I don't know,
grow very close to each other.
Very close.
Well, they did give, like I said, a love interest to both Lance and Alana. For
the Lance love interest never really goes anywhere, though. The last time we see her is in the dance episode, and he asks her to go, and she turns him down, basically.
Right. And meanwhile, they're both sharing some martial arts moves, and they seemingly have very complementary or almost identical loner personality types, which definitely got Lance's attention. Meanwhile, Alana, she ends up not hooking up, but she ends up becoming infatuated with this one dorky dude who has a habit of literally falling head over heels.
This fucking nerd. I don't know why. I don't get it. I don't know why she looks at him in that party scene where we're first introduced to him. I don't know what makes her go yeah,
maybe it's his naivety, his maybe it's that sort of childlike innocence that she appreciates compared to all the very negative, type personality types in high school.
Maybe, I don't know.
All I could say is that his long, shaggy hair kind of reminds me a bit, unfortunately, of D-Man.
He does look a little bit like D-Man.
like pre-beard D-Man.
Right.
Oh, there's also the neighbor, who's got the hots for Octus's dad persona.
Right, the horny neighbor. So many horny characters in this show.
Yeah, like remember
everyone's horny.
Like anytime Kimmy and her two friends hug, have an emotional moment and they hug each other. There's always two dudes in the back who just fist bump each other. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
I was like, I totally forgot that they existed. So when I was rewatching the series with you, I'm like, really, Gendy? You put this in a kid's show on Cartoon Network? You're seriously implying that? I mean, don't get me wrong. It's funny, and I like it. But the fact that it blows my mind that so much of this stuff is on a show aimed at the Ben 10 Generator Rex Teen Titans crowd.
Right, exactly. That's why I said I think this show was marketed to the wrong people, and I think that's part of why it died.
You know what? Maybe I can understand why they couldn't get a toy licensor in a toy licensor in the first place.
It might be.
Earlier before I also forgot to mention that this has a surprisingly amount of violence and on-screen death, where to the point where when you see gunfire, you don't see like sci-fi laser guns. These are like actual guns with bullets.
Legitimate guns.
Yeah. Actual like bullet shells and shit. So this show definitely goes all out with its violence. I mean, you don't see a lot of.
I'm amazed that Cartoon Network let him do that, because I think of all the restrictions he was under when he was working on Samurai Jack. And somewhere between the early 2000s to 2010, the executives at Cartoon Network fucking removed their tampons and said, okay, let's let this man put some actual action in this show.
Right. We're gonna. He was like, we're gonna have some action in this action show, right? Hello?
We're gonna have guns. Are they laser guns? No, they're real guns. Oh, I don't know. Batman TAS did it.
I hope.
You're right.
I hope they don't shoot each other too hard, at least.
It's interesting how in the 90s you could get away with real guns, and then for some reason in the early 2000s it was taboo, you know?
Right. Where it can only be lasers, and they cannot kill you or blast you apart, they have to stun you.
It's like you look at Batman TAS and it's like Tommy guns all over the place. And then slowly it starts to shift towards laser weapons. And by the time you get to Justice League, everybody's shooting lasers everywhere.
Right. Or like if you look at Samurai Jack, it's like he's allowed to slice up like non-human entities and robots. But it wasn't until the very last season 5 for Adult Swim that you see Samurai Jack like murdering actual humans.
Yeah, and see him covered in blood instead of oil.
Right. or green slime.
Right.
And like
there's that one episode where he killed those bounty hunters, but it was off screen, they didn't show anything. And like knowing that universe, they were probably all secretly robots anyway.
Right. And also there's the part where like even one of our main characters died and the episode just ends there.
Right, it just stops. So much balls.
Yeah, it was like, that's the story. Oct is dead. Bye. Yeah, so like it really goes. I feel like this show really pulls no punches in terms of how it executes its drama, its comedy, its character building. It really feels very well crafted, very fine tuned, I would say. And perhaps it is because Gendy and his buddies have had a long history of storytelling to various degrees, whether it's a comedic action show like Dexter's Laboratory or a dramatic show like a dramatic action show like Samurai Jack, or a war drama like Clone Wars, that he was able to take all his experiences on these various projects and sort of, take what he has learned to create this. Honestly, this is almost like a masterpiece, I would even go so far as to say, with Sym-Bionic Titan.
Yeah, and I mean, the other two co-creators of his, I looked them up. They're like veterans of the animation industry. They've been around. They've worked on many projects, including Gindy's previous work, Samurai Jack and Clone Wars. They one of them was involved with Two Stupid Dogs, if anybody remembers Two Stupid Dogs.
I remember Two Stupid Dogs.
I remember the theme song. It went, Two Stupid Dogs.
Oh, I forgot. There's an appearance of the house from Courage the Cowardly Dog in this show.
Yeah, there's a lot of pop culture references. Also, one of them was involved with you remember the Secret Squirrel, the version that was around the same time as Two Stupid Dogs?
Right.
Yeah.
It was paired up with Two Stupid Dogs in that time block.
You're right, because that's back when they used to pair shit up together, like Cow and Chicken and I Am Weasel.
Or Dexter's Laboratory, Dial M for Monkey, and what was the one that was like the Justice League?
Yeah, the Justice Friends.
Yes, yeah.
Major glory. No, but yeah, there's a lot of pop culture references. In one episode, there's a bank robbery going on, and the thugs who are doing the bank robbery are just the bad guys from Die Hard.
Right.
Like the entire crew. Like at first you were like, is that Hans Gruber? And I was like, no, that can't be. And then all the other guys showed up, and I was like, holy shit, it is just the gang from Die Hard.
Right.
There's this whole racing, like car racing episode that's like...
it's straight up, straight up Tokyo Drift in here.
Yeah, and I don't know if those characters that were in that episode are from Tokyo Drift, but based on what happened with the Die Hard, I would imagine they probably are. I was like, who are these weird gang members who are supposed to be in high school but look like they're 30? Like, one of these dudes straight up looks like Danny Trejo. He's, like, standing in the background. Like, just like,
Asian Trejo.
The main guy is this weird, like, Japanese dude with, like, a really strong jawline for a Japanese dude.
Right, and then like the theme song is straight up like copying or imitating the theme song from Tokyo Drift as well. That was the episode where we got your favorite character, the sassy black driving instructor. Yes,
loved her. She was super sassy.
Glad she was sassy enough for you. What was it? Trying to think of other standout moments there. The Ballad of Scary Mary, where that was straight up like just the beginning was a reference to Carrie.
Yeah, the whole story was like Carrie, but she looked like Velma, so it was very confusing.
And oh, that's right, yeah. And then like the actual alien in the show is kind of like puts on disguises, so it's like a little bit of John Carpenter's The Thing as well.
Oh yeah, sort of. Yeah. It's really freaky in that episode when he's fighting the Sym-Bionic Titan. And he just transforms into Kimmy.
Right.
But he's giant. It's like Attack of the 50-Foot Woman Kimmy with like these huge like claws for hands. It's like really disturbing.
And even huger tracts of land.
Fortunately, he did not drop it like it's hot.
No. Unfortunately, this Kimmy does not do that. That would have been a real booty quake, if you know what I mean.
The sonic clap of those cheeks.
Oh god. We're terrible human beings. But not as terrible as spiders. And if you're a follower of the Demons of Outer Space, you'd know what I'd be talking about.
They're not.
No. That's a podcast. Go check it out on Zazubar's channel. We have these Dylan and Zazubar haven't updated in a long time, but you should definitely go back and listen.
Or don't. It's up to you. What were we talking about?
Just pop culture references. I do remember there was a moment where there was a character modeled after Genndy Tartakovsky himself. Yes. Let's see. I'm trying to remember if there were any other characters that sort of resembled characters from other sources. But
there's that one thug in the G3 episode who looked a lot like Darkseid.
Oh yes, there was a guy who looked like Darkseid, but he also kind of had the face similar to like that the Guardian from Samurai Jack.
And then he just gets bodied.
Yes. Let's see. You know, I totally forgot. We mentioned Solomon, who is the leader of G3, which is the what's it called, like the Galactic Guardian something, where group, yeah, the Galactic Guardian group, and they're sort of like the secret squad that has jurisdiction over any and all alien activity. Not sure if they're
They never show us like a G3 logo, but how much you want to bet that the 3 is like cubed? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's
you could I'm not sure if they're supposed to be an American organization or an international organization.
I think they're international. I mean they're basically the Science Patrol, right?
Right. And they seem to be like a super secret organization that at least the world's government are aware of, or at least the U.S. military is aware of. And that leads us to General Steele, who is a lot of fun as an antagonistic character within Season 1.
Yeah, he's basically General Thunderbolt Ross.
Right. Or like to borrow a joke from Zazubar from a while back, he is essentially the General Hard-Ass character archetype, and John DiMaggio as General Steele plays this role spectacularly.
Absolutely. He's a great character and a very entertaining antagonist. He takes a lot of joy in his work, and it's a joy to watch him.
Yes. He's definitely like one of those people who just like, he loves America, he loves freedom, and he's not gonna let no darn aliens take his right to defend the earth from criminal alien scum away from him. He's a true blue-blooded American. He's like a red, white, and blue-blooded American. And that he really gets
what you just said.
he really gets his chance to shine in the two-part. It's not really a two-parter, but it's essentially a two-parter. The two-part season finale, where
when he spends half the time just shouting "Hammer,
hammer," yeah, and he just says two things: hammer and yeah. So yeah, he is very fun. And he is his back and forth with Solomon is definitely very amusing. He's constantly making things worse for everybody involved in the conflict, and by just constantly trying to outdo G3 by taking as many alien resources as he can find and scramble together some weapon to outdo the Titan robot and protect the Earth from future Mutrati monsters.
And so he creates Hammer, which is basically Cherno Alpha 3 years before Cherno Alpha.
Right. It's like Cherno Alpha mixed with like anime giant robo.
It's also kind of similar to the Zaku robots from Gundam.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. And it also, like, as a robot design, it's really cool to see like a more slightly loosely realistic take on robots compared to Sym-Bionic, compared to the Titan, given how much slower it moves and functions. Let's see. I haven't mentioned, what was it? The Titan himself. It's a very cool robot, very uniquely designed, and it can definitely tell why it was done in CG, given how complex the design was. And it essentially looks like, I didn't knew this at the time, but now having watched the Toys That Made Us, it's essentially...
Yes, if you don't know about this, go check out our episode about the Toys That Made Us. Or you can just watch Toys That Made Us.
It's essentially like one big homage to Henshin Robot, or Henshin Robo, which essentially...
It's Cyborg, isn't it?
Henshin Cyborg, thank you very much. Yeah, it's essentially Henshin Cyborg, where I believe it was Takara, they took these G.I. Joe molds, made them out of clear plastic, and put a bunch of machine parts inside the clear plastic to give them a cyborg look. And that's essentially what Sym-Bionic, the Titan, looks like, as it has this like translucent shell, armored shell around its body, and inside you see similar gears and mechanisms inside. And it's a very unique look.
The overall shape of the robot, though, like the bodily proportions, are very similar to a Mazinger Z or
totally
any one of those giant robots. It's the very defined like cod piece, or not cod piece, but the whatever you call that, the briefs.
The briefs, the groin.
Yeah. If you're familiar with
pelvis.
If you're familiar with a little robot called Draco Azul, which whoever designed that did a fantastic job, I really must say. I mean, it's superb work all around.
Well, you do know, I was pretty much the one that laid out the blueprints for you. I was the one that came up with the tidy blueies.
Yeah, you drew a hieroglyphic, and I translated it into
fuck you, Dylan.
into the modern tongue.
I'm giving you credit, but I'm not giving you that much credit.
I challenge you to post to put in this video the original MS Paint drawing.
You know, fine, I'll do that. I've already shared it on Facebook, and I'll do so here.
Just so people understand.
So yes,
I had to work with.
They'll see where everything that came from me and everything that came from you. And then eventually the final design that we settled on that became the blueprint for everyone else's take on Draco Azul. All joking aside, yes, it's definitely like the overall outline of the robot was definitely cut from the same cloth that I was used for Draco Azul. And of course, you gotta top it off with a Roman gladiator helmet, which just works wonderfully for a robot meant to be a soldier fighting against evil.
I also really appreciated how this, one of its abilities is that it can form weapons.
Right.
And early on in the show, it seems like all it can do is a sword and a shield, because that's what it uses throughout the majority of the early episodes. But then as the show progresses, we see him produce a number of weapons, spears. I think he does an axe at some point. He even does that Japanese weapon. I wish I could remember what it's called.
It's like a sickle.
It's a sickle with like a weight on the other end of a chain.
Yeah, chain mail. Yeah, it's a chain, like a chain mail connected to a sickle. It's really cool. And it also has the ability to turn into Optimus Prime with a larger helmet, a faceplate, a mouthplate, and wings to fly in space. It's a
Kusarigama. I'm definitely not pronouncing that correctly, but you can go look that up if you don't know what we're talking about.
Sure. And if you don't know, now you know.
Word up.
And it's definitely it gives the robot the ability to have have a lot of hidden surprises. And I like how not even Octus being like barely born at the start of the series, it's a nice excuse as like even he's not aware of all the capabilities that he's able to perform. So that's a great workaround to where it's like you can just have something pop up and just be like, oh yeah, I guess this is a thing I could always do. But I like how they don't really necessarily rely so much on it, where it's like, oh, this is the thing that saves the day. They tend to, fight the monsters in very clever ways with some really fun fight choreography. And let's see. As for the fights themselves, I did like how the CGI of the robots, both not just with Titan, but also the other robots the robot suits that Lance and Alana can transform into prior to combining with Octus to become Titan. They're all portrayed in CG, not for Octus though. But what I really like is how the CG doesn't look too distracting. It always seems so it works so much better than it should have any right to be. It's able to blend in with the rest of its surroundings very well. And in fact, if you were to take snapshots of the robots in action, it honestly looks like they were drawn. It was like a drawn still frame from the show. So it's not until they're moving does it look like they're actually portrayed in CG.
Right. The integration was definitely a little weird at first. It took me some time to adjust to that. Just because I don't know, it's different. It's seeing Gindy's sort of style conveyed through this 3D. It took a minute, especially since it's surrounded by 2D.
Right, even the monsters are 2D as well.
It's one thing to watch like Hotel Transylvania, which is entirely in 3D, but you can still see Gindy's sort of, sensibilities in it. And to watch this, where it's like a 2D world with this 3D, thing running around in it.
Right.
There's also some really weird moments where they use 3D, and I'm like, I don't know if they needed to there. Like, for instance, in the prequel episode, where at one point the Mutrati, it's like just a group of Mutrati walking down some stairs, and for some reason they're in 3D.
Right.
And it just looks really strange the way they're moving.
Right, because it looks like they're kind of like they're like barely animated. They're just like their bodies are just rocking left and right.
Yeah, it's like a weird walk cycle.
Yeah, it's very distracting. Go ahead.
Meanwhile, all the 2D characters are so fluid and feel, So that's one thing that Gendy's very good at, by the way, is conveying like weight and like, when he draws something in motion, it feels solid, even though it's doing like crazy like flips through the air.
Right. I do remember one portion. It was like an early episode where Titan is essentially fighting Mecha King Ghidorah, and there's a part where like the robot trips over and he's falling. He puts his hands on the ground and he's like mere inches away from his face smashing against a boy in a backyard pool. The moment the boy turns around and sees this massive face staring at him, you see him just pissing the pool in fear.
Right.
So it's like there are definitely some really great moments that show off the weight and scale of these characters. And like honestly, I haven't seen like giant monster robot action this amazing since honestly like Megas XLR, which is another fantastic robot anime love letter parody show that was unfortunately canceled before its time. What is it with Cartoon Network's insistence on canceling great shows? Right.
The Megas XLR episode with I forget the name. What was that robot spider thing?
I'm trying. Was it like the one that had like a very over the top and dramatic chorus like theme song?
Yeah, it's like the most badass.
I am the Regis Mark V. I will destroy all of the planet.
Regis, yes. If you haven't seen that episode of Megas XLR, I encourage everyone to go check that out. It's the best.
Yes.
It's one of my favorite episodes of animation ever.
Indeed. Let's see here. There was one monster, by the way, that I just realized looked a lot like Shenron from Dragon Ball Z.
Yes.
And that was a cool fight.
That's the one that they had to use the Kusarigama against, I think.
Yes, that is indeed the one that they used him against. I forgot to mention the main villain and Alana's father. They had some really good dialogue, some moments back there. Occasionally they would, on a few occasions, especially early on in the series, but not so much as the show progresses, they cut back to what's currently happening on Galaluna, which is their alien planet, their home planet. And one of the Galalunians, what's his name? Medulla. I think it was General Medulla. He betrays the king and attempts to form a coup d'etat on the entire planet of Galaluna by becoming essentially the head, or rather the brains of the Mutrati, which are described as being a bunch of mindless, savage, war-hungry beasts. I don't know, they kind of describe them, I guess, me not being a Trek fan, kind of like Klingons in a way. And no. No, I guess I should give the Klingons far more credit than that. Again, yeah. I'm a casual when it comes to Star Trek.
Yeah, we'll fix that one of these days.
Right. But yeah, they're essentially a bunch of mindless brutes, and General Medulla essentially is the brains to help them, using his brains and their bronze to take over the planet, and he's definitely very threatening. And he works as a villain, just unfortunately because this is the first episode of the first season of what would have been an ongoing story. We don't get to see that much of him, but I do appreciate the flashback episodes that show his prior relationship as essentially the king's right-hand man.
Right. Yeah, that was cool to see.
And I do like the times where he is dealing with someone who is creating a monster for him to send to Earth, and anytime the monsters fail, the person ends up losing their life.
It's a very interesting villain design, because it's sort of out there and kind of wacky,
Oh yeah.
You wouldn't look at him and immediately think villain. Main villain of this giant robot series. It's sort of, I don't know how to describe it. It's definitely a step in a different direction when you compare it to some of Gendy's other villains. Aku, the Clone Wars version of General Grievous.
Oh yeah. By comparison, Medulla would definitely be far more subdued. But I do like that he's very willing to throw down when he needs to. Let's see. Anything else about this series here?
You can shoot lasers out of a hat.
That is true. Yeah. I do like that you don't see his eyes at all when he is a villain, but you do see him when he is when you see him in the flashback episodes. So it's like
we needed more information about him turning to the dark side, I feel.
Mm-hmm. We do know that he believes that he was abandoned, despite the king's protest that he thought he was dead. So I guess, I don't know, it's like he felt abandoned, so he said, screw Gallaluna then. But perhaps there's more to the story than meets the eye.
Did we mention the mysterious leader?
Oh,
G3?
We have not mentioned that. Yeah, we do see him at the end. We do see a silhouette of him throughout the season. We've seen him, I want to say, 2 times. Once in, what's it called? The Fortress of Deception.
Yes.
Which is episode 11. We see him at the very end, where we see that Solomon is not the head of G3, but rather it's some creepy guy in a robot suit. And later in the final episode, when Octus dies, we see the mysterious leader of G3 like move over, walk to the lab when it's abandoned. He has some strange, bizarre access to Gallaluna technology. It's really hinted throughout a few times that there's a lot of similarities between Gallalunian technology and the technology G3 uses. On top of that, Solomon knows similar Gallalunian martial arts style that Lance has been trained to do. And on top of that, the Sentai Kamen Rider-esque henchmen of G3 all have helmets that have like Sentai-esque faces, very similar to the helmets that the Gallalunian guards have. So there's a lot of parallels running between this and that. And so prior to recording, I found a theory on the Sym-Bionic wiki that also shows that the voice actor for the G3 leader is the same voice actor as Lance's father, who happened to have mysteriously disappeared after entering a dangerous, unstable portal in the sort of Nightmare on Elm Street episodes.
Yes.
And
so we're pretty sure that Lance's dad is really the mysterious leader of G3.
Yes.
It's the only thing that makes any sense, honestly.
And like he might have created the blueprints for Octus, to which Alana's father might have ended up finishing up as a result. And it's very interesting. Again, it sucks that that plot line was never handled. But if that is the case, if that is meant to be Lance's father, which they clearly hinted at him still being alive somewhere somehow, I'd say that would have made for a great twist. Yeah,
absolutely.
And let's see. So there's definitely some plots, lingering. We still don't know exactly what Octus's deal is, and why he was developed to function the way he is. We don't know a lot about Medulla. We don't know about the G3 Gallaluna connection outside of beyond the hints or the fan theories. I forgot to mention the king. We don't know what's going on over with that. We don't know how he eventually plays into a larger picture, which I would say, I do like the king as well. He's a very good character to follow whenever we go back to Gallaluna. But yeah, despite the fact that we don't get the full picture, I do feel like this, as a first season, does a great job at establishing its characters. It does a lot with its characters, I'd say, than most television shows arguably would. In fact, they definitely.
I think this is I think this is a very strong first season of television.
Definitely. And the last thing I want to mention was, they do establish a Monster of the Week formula, but they do a lot to mix up the formula, where in some cases they spend most of the time fighting the monsters or whatever obstacle. Sometimes not even a monster, it's just an alien with superpowers, and they end up fighting them throughout the majority of the episode, and maybe they'll bring out the Titan just out of obligation at the last second, but most of the action is with the human on the human scale. Or in certain cases, like the second to last episode, we see no Titan whatsoever, or we see Titan at the beginning of the episode, and then later we see Titan. Oh no, we don't see Titan for the rest of the episode. Or I think maybe the episode where Alana gets mutated into a frog zombie monster, that is also an episode where I don't think we've ever seen Titan show up. But we can assume they
I think you're right. Yeah.
Well, it could be assumed that they use Titan to get to that like swampy Florida Everglades area.
Yeah, they definitely established the Monster of the Week formula in the first couple episodes. Mm-hmm. It's very Power Rangers. That whatever that town is called that they're in is basically Angel Grove at this point.
Oh, it was I think it was It's called Sherman. Yeah, Sherman, Illinois.
Okay.
Which apparently is which apparently a real city. I guess.
Oh, cool. So yeah, Sherman, Illinois in this universe is basically Angel Grove from Power Rangers.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, I forgot. I love that there's a bit of continuity where, like, the very first monster that they fight leaves a giant crater, and then over the course of several episodes, you can see they're slowly reconstructing the buildings, and there's like a large bridge for cars to travel between across the crater. And like in the next second or third episode, there's like the Mecha King Ghidorah monster, and after it blows up, we see the legs still standing there next to the forest, at which point when Lance joins a rock band, they perform on the metal legs in the middle of the forest.
Yeah, listen, eventually when Titan defeats Medulla and returns to Galaluna, mm-hmm. that city is going to have so much tourism.
Oh, yeah.
Come see the legs of the giant three-headed thingy. And, like, come see the crater. Like, so many new landmarks.
Absolutely, yeah.
At one point, Titan shoots an arrow and it misses. I don't remember which episode this was in. He shoots an arrow and it misses, and we see it hit the ground, and it explodes with like a lot of force. Like it's like a missile, basically.
Right.
He then proceeds to shoot more arrows, and he misses like 5 or 6 more times.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where did those arrows land? Who died?
Let's say that each of them landed in a convenient building from Megas XLR labeled "convenient building," set for deconstruction, set for demolition.
Hopefully, maybe they all landed in lakes and mountains and grassy areas where there were no people around.
Another thing I want to bring up: I Am Octus, perhaps one of the best episodes in my opinion, where like.
Episode, yeah,
where everybody is like frozen solid except for Octus because he's not a human, and like he finds a way to see how he can get everybody back to normal. And so a lot of the episode is just focused on him coming to grips with his own identity, and meanwhile trying to like save the day by himself, at least for the most part, when the monster eventually shows up in Sherman.
Yeah,
it's a very like existential episode.
That's a really good episode. The cliffhanger right before the series finale is very good. Mostly for that cliffhanger. I mean, that was a major I shit my pants. That was an amazing. That's a reference that very few people will understand. That was a great. I don't know. I feel like my favorite episode might be number 10, though.
Lessons in Love, the twerking episode.
Not because of the twerking.
I getcha.
So that doesn't hurt.
No, not at all. That's some great animation there, Gendy. You did it!
I just thought that was a very cleverly written episode. I enjoyed it a lot.
Absolutely, yeah. It's you know what? I forgot to mention the wonderfully choreographed like music video style of a fight with the giant rope monster. And it kind of makes me think we haven't really seen that many like fights choreographed around music, not since like maybe the Powerpuff Girls music video, if you remember that.
Oh yes, of course I remember that. Yeah.
And I think they do that like 1 or 2 more times in the series. But yeah, it's a really good episode as well. I definitely love episode 10 as well. I mentioned before the Nightmare on Elm Street episode. What was it?
That's a good one.
Shaman of Fear. Yeah, they have some really disturbing visuals there. Where the shaman like Mutrati like peers into the darkest fears of Alana and Lance, and that's where you get our first glimpses of backstory from Lance as well. Yeah, there's definitely
the Scary Mary episode we talked about before is very memorable.
Right. And I gotta say, the repertoire that the relationship, the budding romance between Newton and Kimmy is, I gotta admit, is very charming to watch.
Yeah, I don't think we ever explained the parallelograms thing.
No, we didn't. No, just let's have the folks out there watch episode 10.
Yeah, if you want to know
parallelograms.
If you care to understand that reference, you don't. But if you do, just go watch the show, man. Then you'll understand.
The very first flashback episode is another standout one, I'd say.
Yes, both of the flashback episodes I thought were very good. It was nice to get some backstory. But particularly that second one.
Yes.
I really enjoyed that villain that they introduced, too. Who's basically just there to give Lance something to fight until he meets up with Alana at the end.
Oh, absolutely, yes. That was like our Samurai Jack moment right there in terms of like a sword fight.
Yeah, it was a great fight.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. So yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Fortress of Deception is a good episode.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we finally get to like know who and what G3 is all about, and I do like how they slowly evolve from a secondary antagonistic force to an ally of the trio.
Yes.
Let's see. Yeah. So those are definitely some of our favorite episodes. I mean, I can't even, now that I think about it, back to all these 20 episodes, I can't think of, like, I know I mentioned I Am Octus, but there's so many more great episodes, it's hard to put a pin on what my favorite is. But it might be Octus for now, but that might change as time goes on. But overall, even at one single season... Sorry, go ahead.
I can tell you my least favorite episode.
Okay, go ahead. I think I might know what it is.
Really?
It's either the one with it has to do with a cute thing.
A cute thing. Oh no!
No, okay.
I forgot about that episode. I don't hate that episode.
Okay.
That's a fun little episode, and I liked the name gag.
Yeah.
No, my least favorite episode, and it's only because I think it had a lot of potential, and I don't think it ever really lived up to that potential.
Okay.
There's a very early episode where the general character is like experimenting on a chunk of the first monster.
I remember that
from the original episode.
Yeah.
And it's like a really cool idea for an episode. He's tampering with this alien DNA. What's gonna happen?
Mm-hmm.
Solomon calls him up on the monitor and is like, "Don't do it. You don't know what you're doing. You may not like what you find." And then he's like. He does it anyway. He's like, "Don't do the thing," and he's like, "I'm gonna do the thing." And I'm sitting there like thinking, like, "Wow, what's gonna happen? What's this gonna turn into?" And it was a big cloud.
Yeah.
It was a bit disappointing. I feel like I don't remember anything else about that episode, honestly. Once the big cloud thing happened,
yeah, I'm even trying to look it up, and I'm like, what is that actually?
And I was like, is something gonna come out of the cloud? No. It's
lightning. It's just a cloud with lightning. It's a big spooky cloud. It's movie Galactus.
Exactly. A big cloud is never better than having a giant creature.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Learn that lesson, Hollywood. No more big cloud.
Right.
So that was probably my least favorite episode. If for no other reason than that it wasn't super memorable, and also I felt like they could have done something really cool with that initial premise.
Right. Let's see. Yeah, I'm trying my best to find out what the heck what episode that was. Okay. Oh, it was.
I know it's an early one.
It was episode 3, Elephant Logic. That was the one where it was involving another cutesy thing that I mentioned, where Octus is trying to learn from a children's programming series to try to see.
Oh, that's the same episode.
That's the same episode. Yeah, that was the B plot of this show episode. I
enjoyed that.
Okay.
I should enjoy the B plot more than the A plot, but I enjoyed that joke.
Yeah.
Of him like singing that stupid kid song.
Right. And then like he blares this, like when Lance and Alana are arguing inside Titan, like Newton or Octus, he blares out that music so everyone in the vicinity can hear that stupid preschool song.
Yeah.
It's a great moment. Like you could definitely tell where the effort went into that episode. Yeah,
I really enjoyed the humor in that episode in hindsight. But it was the just the plot and the main threat was very underwhelming.
I get ya. So yeah, despite
I don't think there's a single episode of this series though that I would come out and say like, this is bad.
Right.
Just some are better than others.
Right. So unfortunately, to wrap this up, this is, well, not unfortunately, but unfortunately I gotta wrap this up, but to bring things full circle, despite this only lasting 20 episodes and being canceled, and the chances of this maybe not ever seeing, the chances of a revival, probably we may never see that come to fruition, I gotta say, what we did got, I am so genuinely glad we got it. It is a series that I have loved and enjoyed for 10 whole years now. And so I cannot recommend this enough. Pretty much like, if you're a fan of Professor Kaiju, you know how much he loves SSSS.Gridman, which I love too. This is essentially my Gridman. This is the show that I will continue to fully endorse 500% to anybody and everybody. Whether you're a fan of 90s Cartoon Network, you're a fan of Genndy Tartakovsky, a fan of animation, fan of giant monsters and robots, fan of teenage dramas, all of that stuff, or sci-fi and action adventure, all of that stuff, I cannot fully endorse this enough. So it's like, if you haven't seen Sym-Bionic Titan and you got yourself a Netflix account, go do yourself a favor and check this shit out.
Absolutely. Especially if, like me, you're like a huge Genndy fan and you haven't seen this yet. It was very nice to fill in this gap in my Genndy knowledge. I knew I would like it, but I was really surprised by how much I liked it.
I'm very glad to hear that, man. I finally converted another individual to join the Church of Titan.
Yes.
So so thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. So what? And I do hope that you will get the chance to check it out, and I'm very glad that Dillion fully endorses it, this series as well, as two friends who were practically born and raised on Genndy Tartakovsky's work on top of everyone else's work from old school and Cartoon Network. So what are we going to be talking about next time for episode 22?
Next time, listen, it's November. And if you don't know, November is a very big month, not just for turkeys, but also for James Bond. I don't know why. I don't know why November is like James Bond month, but it is. And so we're going to do a little Bond. Andres has seen very little Bond in his life. And so we're gonna change that. We're going to show him a classic in honor of the recently deceased late great Sean Connery. The next episode of Fully Endorsed will be taking a look at perhaps the most famous Bond film, particularly of that era, Goldfinger from 1965, 3. What year was it? 4? One of those years.
Check here. I mean, I've seen Gold Member, if that counts. I know it doesn't. 64.
You will definitely see some things in this that you'll go, oh, that's where that Austin Powers joke came from. All right, so Goldfinger, 1964, next time on Fully Endorsed.
Excellent, man. I mean, and as for, Sean Connery, he was the man. He was certainly the man, now and forever, dog.
Listen, sometimes you just have to slap a woman, all right? You use an open hand, not a closed fist.
The penis mightier. Shuck it, Rebecca. Which, ironically,
do you think it's good to hit a woman? I don't think it's good. I think it depends on the circumstances and whether or not it merits it. Sometimes they just won't shut the fuck up.
Thank you very much, everybody. I have been Andres Perez, aka Kaiju Noir.
I've been Super Dave 64.
And until next time, my friends, take care.